Good morning and welcome back to Planet Althistory. Today we are going to discuss what if Rome conquered Ireland. When looking at history books and maps from ancient Europe, I always wondered why a place like Ireland, that at least was really close to Rome and the Roman Empire, was never conquered. But then we have places like Crimea that were actually far apart from other important centers of the ancient world, and they were Roman. Well, of course nowadays I know that Crimea was part of the Hellenized world. You had Greek colonies in there, so it all adds up. But Ireland always managed to stay apart, kind of independent. And then we get also this Council of Strabo, which really doesn't help us a lot, where he, well, of course he admits that he doesn't have any valid sources for the claims that he was making. And he was saying stuff like basically the inhabitants of Ireland, they were just eating their old deceased fathers who were dead, and it was an honorable act apparently to do so. Yeah, and then incest and, well, many other things which I don't want to explain any further. But come on, let's be honest in here. Who else was not a barbarian outside of Rome? I mean, everyone at some point was considered a barbarian. Anyways, Ireland was not far away from Britain, or the province Britannia. And Ireland, they also had some interesting resources which they could provide to the Romans, like wool, slaves, and there were also mines that provided with gold, lead, silver and salt, but these mines, they were not that known. Rome also had a small presence in Ireland, and the Roman camp on the east coast near Dublin has been discovered by archaeologists, but due to the political situation in Ireland, not much of it has been really revealed, and it's very difficult to study further about Roman presence in Ireland. Which means that we don't really understand to which extent we already had a Roman presence in there. But let's say all of that changed. What if Rome conquered Ireland? Well, the first thing we would change is that somehow they would get a report or something about these mines in Ireland, and they would be very interested and keen to see it. Another thing that is for sure is, in order to subjugate all of Ireland, you need manpower. And also the timing. The timing is very important, and we have to take it into the consideration, especially if we take such an empire like Rome, which suffered of many crises. With that in mind, I think that the conquest of Ireland could happen somewhere between the year 100-150, which means that Mesopotamia must wait and it will become later part of Rome. The first few years, it is clear that Ireland would become an economic backwater province or territory. The name of it would be Hibernia, or it would just fall under the rule of Britannia, which means that Britannia and Hibernia together, they would just be a province together, or it would be called Britannia too, or there are many ways how to put it, because the Romans, they were sometimes very uncreative with the names of their provinces. Once you have Hibernia under control, nothing else prevents you to just drop by and say hi to the Picts in Scotland. Yes, they were very fearsome warriors, but if you have Hibernia for some years under your rule and you can draw some manpower and you're pretty much bothered by them, why not just try to conquer them? Around the year 200, all of the British Isles would be under Roman control. Ireland especially would benefit in the long term from Roman rule. Ireland would get trade ports, and Dublin would be developed much faster, but under a different name, of course. We would have roads which would connect Ireland in a much better way, and it would also unite all of Hibernia. So there would not be this tribal identity anymore, but it would slowly decrease and become something like, oh yeah, I'm from the province Hibernia. I'm a Hibernian. The plain reason for this is that Dublin was flat. That's why Dublin would be developed, and that's why Dublin actually exists. While the rest of the Irish coast has a rocky coast, and it would be just too difficult to reach Rome from a rocky coast, of course. The Irish tribes would Romanize over the years, and with the influx of former Roman soldiers, Roman merchants, and considering the fact that Ireland already had a pretty low population, Ireland would definitely see a linguistic shift, and Ireland would also have a very different identity. It would not be known as this Celtic country, but actually it would be fully fledged Latinized. Ireland might be a province, but not totally controlled by the Romans, and one might see some tribal Irish kings or some type of proto-federacy, because it would still take years to take all of Ireland. They would receive some special rights or specific goods in exchange, and thus they would just be very happy to serve under the Roman Empire. After some decades, Ireland would be pretty much pacified. Irish soldiers would quickly become known as good and strong soldiers, which would be used in the conquest of Scotland or the Pictland, and later in the rest of the Roman Empire. The empire would later, of course, need less legions in the British Isles because the Picts would be conquered and subjugated. Many Picts, of course, they would unfortunately be killed, displaced, and some might choose to collaborate because, well, for reasons. Britannia and Hibernia would probably break off from Rome during the crisis of the 3rd century, and later they would break also from the Gallic Empire, only to come back to the Roman Empire once more. Ireland would be fairly peaceful, and I think it would be one of the most stable and prosperous parts of the Roman Empire. Ireland, before the conquest of Rome, was in the so-called Irish Dark Age. There were no bigger cities, not even settlements, and the trade routes, they were fairly small and unused. But just putting some settlements in Ireland, just giving them a bigger connection or bigger reason to have these set connections in Ireland and outside of Ireland, it will already tremendously develop this province. One cannot imagine. And then of course we have the mines which the Romans they would exploit, and there you go. Over the years, instead of being a backwater province, Ireland would make profit and even contribute to the empire. The biggest change we would see is during the fall of Western Rome. Being stable and having no conflicts with neighboring tribes is very attractive, and Roman refugees they might seek to sail to Britannia or even to Hibernia to start a new life. Germania and Gaul would be even more populated than in OGL, and moreover the Pictish raids in response to the Scots that came from Ireland and went then into Caledonia. Well, the Pictish raids they would not happen, and without them the Saxons they would also never be invited as mercenaries to protect the coast of Britannia. And it would really change a lot, not only in the British Isles but also in Europe, in mainland Europe. It is possible that both islands they will have their own form of Christianity. They will not maybe become Catholic, but they would just have, you know, the same thing that they had like other parts of Dark Age Europe, where the ruler or the highest ruler would control or have a talk with the church. There would always be some type of council or things like that that happened frequently, even within the Roman Empire. Speaking of the Visigothic kingdom and also of who might become the ruler of this construct, we have to take a look also in other parts of Western Europe, not only the Visigothic kingdom where the king was controlling the church, but parts like Soissons, for instance, or Dalmatia, where you still had apparently the last Western Roman emperor. Well, maybe he was, maybe not. It's still very much a big fight within historians, but we could have something similar in Hibernia and also in Britannia, where the highest ruler of some Romanized family, or actually of a Roman patrician family, which I don't really think, but more rather of a Romanized family, would claim that the Emperor of Rome or the Emperor of Constantinople bestowed them with the right to rule over the said lands. One problem I might see down the line is that at some point Britannia would be lost or split with invading Germanic tribes, while Hibernia would have no problems or fewer problems. I'm more talking about the Angles or the Jutes, or also other peoples that would just come because of these butterflies that we have, like maybe some Franks, or I don't know who might come, but there would still be some type of disruption. Which doesn't mean that trade would be disrupted, no. Contacts with the Visigoths or an alternate Frankish kingdom, who would probably not have subjugated the Saxon as they would stay in the mainland, well, they would still have a lot of contact and also a lot of trade going on. At some point the Germanic tribes in Britannia could be absorbed into the main Romanized culture or be conquered by Hibernian forces. Britannia would be devastated and see less development, while Hibernia, Ireland would just be fine. This will make Ireland a rather prosperous and a learned centre in the late antiquity and the early Middle Ages. As Britain and Gaul, they would burn under invasion and war, they would have death and destruction. A lot of important texts may be preserved in Latin, as well as engineering and political know-how. Hibernia would be quite sophisticated in comparison to other states, and they might even become a mini Byzantium. The Viking Age will yet again take Britannia away from Hibernia, but due to the continuous trade with the rest of Europe, Hibernia will have a navy because it was a need for them to have one. And they would probably also make more damage than other Europeans in that time. The Vikings, who already in OTL were not that much interested in Ireland, yes, they still came, but they were not that much interested, they would thus leave them in peace and go for easier targets to pick up. After the Viking Age, Britannia will again fall to Hibernia, but after a longer time. And in that moment, when Hibernia would also have Britannia under the rule, we would have a Hiberno-Britannian Latin culture that could arise, which means that in there the Christianity would be controlled from Hibernia. We would have some Latin language in there, which would also be mostly influenced from Hibernia. And also, depending on this ATL situation of Western Europe and the butterflies involving the Saxons, Hibernia might even venture into Western Europe and later on become the most dominant naval force in Western Europe and Northern Europe, or even have the potential to become the most dominant force in that region. With a lot of luck, the luck of the Irish, Hibernia might even pull off a Portugal and build a trade empire along the African and Indian coast, while also building colonies in the Americas even before there would be a discovery of Columbus. Well, he wouldn't exist in this timeline due to the butterflies. Hibernia would truly become the third Rome, not Russia, after the fall of this alternate Byzantium, and also spread a Romanized culture and become even greater than Rome itself. And that's where we leave it for now.
That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, support me also on Patreon, and join my forum, forum.planetalthistory.ga. Until next time on Planet Alt History.